Morning, everybody. Welcome to Community Scrutiny on this lovely Thursday morning. Can we kick off with apologies, please?
Yes, so far I haven't received any formal apologies. Just for your information as well, Councillor Rachel Flynn is no longer a member of the committee and Councillor Hugh Irving is joined in place of her. But I haven't heard anything from Councillors Anton Sampson, Cheryl Williams or Alan Hughes.
Anton Sampson sends his apologies. He's not well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Chair, I'm sure Cheryl said she was coming on. If she's not, I'll give her a phone in a minute. I'm going to have to, I don't know whether this meeting will go on past 12:30. If it does, I'm going to have to leave, Chair, 12:30. Have a meeting, a real town council meeting on the prom at 1 o'clock.
If it's got anything to do with me, Brian, it won't be there 12:30, so don't worry. So,
okay, Chair.
Can I just thank Rachel Flynn for all the hard work she's put into the committee, and also welcome Hugh Irving, who's a great asset to this community working group. So welcome, Hugh, and lovely to see you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll do my best to make a contribution.
Number 2 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? No declarations of interest. Everybody quiet. So we'll move on to agenda item number 3, urgent matters agreed by the chair. There are no urgent matters agreed by myself. Rhian? No, just to confirm, nothing. No. Okay. Agenda item 4 are the minutes of the both previous meetings. One was on the, we'll do the first one first, the Thursday, the 1st of July 2021. And we'll go through, I haven't got, we'll go through for accuracy on the page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Any matters arising for the one on the 1st of July 2021? No, everybody quiet. Can I have a proposal and second whether they are correct?
Dwi mewn Hugh. Hugh, dwi wedi rhoi llaw fyny os ydy hynny'n iawn.
Sorry. Mary, yeah, helping.
Diolch yn fawr. Os gai droi tudalen 10, sef y darn ola, lle mae'r pwyllgor wedi gorffen y drafodaeth, a mae yna 1 a 2. O dan 1, dwedir bod yr adroddiad yn mynd i'r cyngor sir Medi 21. Be ydy'r sefyllfa? Achos ar o ddim cyrraedd, dwi'n meddwl.
Sorry, Chair. The translation, although I have got it correct, isn't coming through.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear it now?
I can hear it now.
I can hear you now, but it wasn't. When Merrick was talking, it didn't come through.
Right. What I wanted to ask was page 10.1. The report was due to come to full council in September this year, the 7th of September, but nothing came to council. I'm sure there's been some change, has there? Yes, it's been moved to October, but I understand that it will be ready by then for you. Thank you, Chair, and Rhian.
Okay, can I propose in a second, or is there any more questions?
I'll propose it, Chair.
Councillor Parry and Tina seconded. Thank you. All in favour? Yep, everybody in favour. Thank you. So we'll go on now to the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of July 2021, and we'll go through it again for accuracy. Page 1, 2, 3, and 4. Any matters arising from them, please? Everybody quiet? No. Could I have a proposer and seconder? Correct.
I'll propose again, Chair.
And I think it was Mervyn, I think, yeah. Yeah, great.
A second, Chair, if you want, Peter Scott.
Yeah, I think we had Brian and Mervyn. Thank you, Peter. Everybody in agreement while they're correct? Yeah. Peter, you happy? Yeah, yeah, great. That's great. Thank you very much. That's all done. So moving on now to agenda item number 5, I apologise. Who's lead? It's just lost my paper somewhere. Tony Thomas. Tony, would you like to kick off and introduce who we've got with us today, please?
Yep. Thank you, Chair. Obviously, today we've got myself. I see Joel's on the meeting. I think Tony Ward, I can't see whether he's joined yet or not.
Yeah, I'm here, Tony.
I'll just switch the camera off just in case we have any bandwidth difficulties. So we're here today to seek support for the principle that residential/urban areas can be appropriate locations for wildflower meadows. And also we support the proposals for improved engagement and publicity that offers are proposing for the project. So we started off with a pilot in 2020. We had some 21 sites which are managed by Street Scene. This was added to in 2021. We upped it to 58 sites, covering pretty well 50 acres. So the idea is that it all contributes to our improved species enrichment. Sites are managed, despite what some people think, but they are managed as indicated by small border cuts. There's no cut between March and August, and the whole site is cut by specialist mowing equipment, enabling the meadow to set seed and provide the greatest benefit to wildlife. If necessary, some top-up extra wildflower planting will be done. We can shift from one site to another. And this project also supports our bee-friendly status, which we achieved in 2018. I think we were the second authority in Wales to get that status. Some good work done by Joel on that one. So that's my introduction, and we have officer support. So I'll pass over to Tony now, because he no doubt will want to say a few more words. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Bore da pawb. Morning, everybody. I'm going to turn my video off as well, in case there's any issues with you hearing me, if you don't mind. So I'll just do that before I start. Chair, I hope you don't mind indulging me a little bit this morning. I'd like my introduction to be slightly longer than it would normally be for a paper. I hope you'll bear with me. I'm not going to talk for hours, obviously, but I think that there's a few points that I'd like to get through and explain today before we get into the debate. So hopefully you'll all bear with me while I just run through this. As Tony said, we've got some people here to support me, and they'll be here to answer questions, help me answer questions. We've got Joel from Emmeline's service. We've also got Kate Perry from Plant Life, who's kindly joined us today. So thanks for that, Kate. And we've also got Helen Bourne-Evans here as well, because this all links to the climate change agenda. So the reason we wanted to bring this report here today for two main reasons. The first one was to provide members with an update on the results already been delivered by this project. But the second one, and probably most importantly, is to address an issue that has been taking up a lot of officer time, and that is the vociferous complaints we've been receiving from some residents and some members as well, who strongly believe we should not be developing these sites in residential or urban locations. On this second point, we're essentially asking the committee today to confirm its support for the continuation of the project, subject to the introduction of a much more comprehensive engagement and publicity strategy, which is attached at Appendix 4 to this report. So I think the committee will understand the reasons why we are delivering this project, and will also support the outcomes that we're trying to deliver. Essentially, the project is an important element of the climate and ecological change strategy that was adopted by Council in February 2021. and is one of the key elements of our drive to become an ecologically positive council by 2030. So the discussion isn't really about the overarching rationale for the project, because pretty much everyone supports the principle of trying to tackle climate change. The discussion is about the locations we've selected for development as wildflower sites. Specifically, it's been suggested, as I said, by some residents and politicians that the project is not appropriate close to residential areas. And this view is usually based on two factors. The majority of complaints we receive are because people feel that they look messy. People are used to seeing neatly mown grass and prefer that to what they consider to be areas that are now overgrown by weeds. The second argument we hear is that the project has resulted in a loss of amenity space, and that these green spaces were used for a plethora of community activities, including children playing, that are now not possible because of this project. And I'm not here today to dismiss those views or to argue that some people don't feel that way. I think these are genuine concerns being raised by Denbighshire residents, and we therefore need to take them into account. However, on the first point, you know, it's often said that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and it's a subjective thing. We understand that some people will prefer to look at neatly mown grass as opposed to a wildflower meadow, but many people feel exactly the opposite way. And it's not really about who's right and who's wrong, it's a matter of personal taste. I prefer to look at an ecologically rich and visually stimulating wildflower meadow rather than a mundane patch of grass, but that's just my personal view. The main point here is that we're not doing this for aesthetic purposes. We're doing it because we are responding to the global climate emergency. If a lot of people like the way it looks too, then that's an added bonus. But it's aesthetic choice. You know, it's the aesthetic nature of this is in my opinion, not a reason for either continuing or stopping the project. On the second point about the loss of amenity space, I personally see little evidence for this. I'm only aware of 2 cases where parents have raised with us this issue about children not being able to play on these areas anymore. Usually this type of complaint comes from people who don't like the way it looks, and they mention this to add weight to their arguments against the site. Most of the time, the argument is hypothetical, and there's actually nothing that happened on that piece of land before that cannot be done now. It should also be said that planning have previously confirmed that this change in management does not represent a loss of public open space, and that it is acceptable in terms of the designations of land in planning policy. That said, on larger sites where there is clear amenity use, we've ensured that areas are cut to allow this to continue. So we've done kind of a compromise position. And one example is Violet Grove in Grove Park in Rhyl. I'm personally very concerned about any calls to remove sites in residential areas from the project. Most of the sites are actually in urban and peri-urban areas near to where people live. Therefore, removing these sites from the project basically kills the project and destroys the connected wildflower corridors we're trying to establish. The grant funding which paid for the equipment to do the project was for Nature on Your Doorstep, which was set up to ensure that everybody has access to nature where they live and work. So the whole point of the project is actually that these sites are close to where people live. It also needs to be understood when considering the complaints we've received that there's been almost universal support for the vast majority of sites across the county. We've only actually received complaints about a handful of the 58 sites we've developed. And we've also had letters and emails of support from other residents local to those sites where we have received complaints. The complaints we've received have largely been allayed through subsequent dialogue with those residents, but that isn't the case in all cases, and there are still some areas where people are very unhappy about it. So I think we need to keep some perspective on the issue, because opposition is not from a significant proportion of residents who live close to these 58 sites. The response to the project has been almost overwhelmingly positive. But having said that, officers are spending a lot of time and effort responding to the complaints we received, which is why we're asking the committee to confirm its support for the continuation of the project. Basically, that will make it a lot easier for officers to respond to any complaints we receive in future. Just a final 3 thoughts before I finish, if you don't mind. The first one is that the principle of developing wildflower meadows in residential and urban areas was actually consulted on in 2020 and unanimously supported by members when the climate and ecological change strategy was adopted by council in February 2021. The second point is that the project has been incredibly successful so far, even though it's still quite early days. In virtually every case, we've either doubled or tripled the number of species recorded on each site. On one site in Prestatyn, which incidentally was initially the subject of some complaints from residents, we've recorded hound's tongue, which is a near threatened plant on the GB Red List and has only been recorded 18 times in Denbighshire in the last 116 years. So the point here is that the project is proving to be even more successful than even we had hoped at the start. And the final point is about communication. We acknowledge that the communication on this project could probably have been better, and some of the complaints we received are a result of that. We've responded to that by developing a new communication and engagement plan for the project, and that's attached at Appendix 4 to the report. So we hope that by utilising this new communication and engagement plan, we will reduce the number of complaints we receive in future. So thank you for your time there this morning. That was quite a long introduction, but I thought it was important. I'm happy to open the debate up now, Chair. And as I say, we've got a number of people here who will hopefully help me out in answering some of your questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks for the speech. We've got a lot of members putting their hands up to speak. I'm going to take members from inside the committee first, please. Councillor Mervyn Parry first, and then Brian Blakely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've just knocked my camera off so that hopefully you can hear me okay. Just to, yeah, thanks for bringing this paper forward for me. Just, you know, because I'm keen for this to work right, really, and just give you a little bit of flavour of what I do. I'm not sure how many of you know, but I'm a qualified. I've got a diploma in agronomy. And when I was doing that, I also did my beta, which is a conservation management. And I use a lot of that with my work with the landowners that I deal with. So I do understand a little bit about what's going on. I think some of the problems that I can see that has happened maybe with some of these sites, and certainly the one in my site, was that the lack of engagement from the start, that these sites were put up in the communities and probably in other areas where officers didn't discuss the site, so certainly didn't discuss it with me on my site of where this site was going to go and how it was going to be managed. So that I think that might be one of the problems you might have had. I know going forward now you are going to start engaging with the communities, but I think that maybe you might have missed a trick by not doing it to start with. I think that would have been a positive point. One of my problems that I have in the community, the one we've got in Howell, because that's the only one I've got there, and I have sent some pictures in, didn't get some very good responses in my view, that I've got it full of ragworts there. Now I'm in a rural community there. We deal with farmers and horse owners, and they come to the village every time. And I did ask, because although we've got quite a varied species of wildflowers there, in my community, ragwort is not one that is accepted, and neither the community accept, because it's something as an agricultural ward that we're in, it's always been a bit of a battle for us to control that. And Tony mentioned that there's been maybe a lack of complaints. Well, I'm sure possibly maybe the lack of complaints might have come into him, but I'm sure if you go around the room and discuss it with the county councillors around the room here and other county councillors, I've had several complaints about the one in Howell. which I've brought forward as a one complaint from the county councillor. So possibly maybe the other councillors have had the same. But I'll leave it like that for now, Chair. The only other thing I'd like to comment on my ragworts control would be that the ones that and I'm happy for all the weeds or wildflowers to stay there, whatever people call them. Some people call them weeds, I call them wildflowers. But, you know, we haven't got a lot of docks. In some of the ones I've seen, there are quite a lot of thistles and they blow about. Now, and you know, we've got a code of practice by the Welsh Government for the prevention of control of the spread of ragworts, you know, and things like that. So I think we need to be responsible for our communities, and the engagement with the community going forward, I think, is an important thing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mervyn. Tony, we're going to go to Brian first, and then we'll take the two lots of questions because I've got a lot of people with their hands up, if that's okay, Tony. So, Brian Blakely.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, good morning, Tony. Thanks very much for bringing this report this morning. Very comprehensive report. I think you already know where I'm coming from. I'm fully supportive of this. You know, we're having a lot of problems at this moment in time, and we've got to look forward as regards climate change. And we do need to plant. I have seen a lot of the reports that come back from councillors, had very little from my residents. In fact, I haven't had any complaints regarding from my residents. And I think the complaints that I've seen is that at the end of the year, of course, once the flowers bloomed and died, we're left with a little bit of a mess. That happens wherever you go. These flowers come out during the summer, the spring into summer, absolutely fantastic. And at the end of the year, they die. But then again, as you mentioned, we only cut them so far back, so we got the seed to restart again. And the sites that I've seen, especially on my ward, where we've got wildflower meadows, and I think you mentioned Vardwick Grove, and various places like that. Now, I've had no complaints from any of the residents this side of the ward or the other side, and we're looking at doing my Squilham. I have other sites on the Park View that we could turn into wildflower meadows. And as I said, these things do happen. They do look untidy at the end of the year when the flowers die. But I haven't got any complaints, and I look forward to maybe seeing one or two. Maybe you're putting a little bit more into it. The only problem I have, and the only sort of qualm I have, is consultation. You did mention communication. I would like, and I'm sure other councillors would to be to have consultation with yourself as regards where we're going to put these, when we're going to put them, and what sort of planting we'll be using, what sort of flowers we'll be putting in. Make sure that we do get the best blooms possible, so that the sites look absolutely fantastic during the summer months when these flowers come out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Tony, who's going to kick off for you?
Yeah, I'll kick off, Chair, if you don't mind. I'm going to bring in Joel, obviously, as well, particularly on the ragwort issue, because he knows far more about it than I do. Just you both, Brian and Mervyn, mentioned the engagement and consultation element. I agree with you. You know, we accept that. And to be honest, and I've said before when I did my kind of presentation, largely these sites, the vast majority of these sites have been supported by the community. So I think there is an element of proportionality to this, because engaging with, heavily with 58 different communities is quite a big task for a very small team. So would have required a lot of work to have done this belt and braces. So we did do some stuff. We did, let communicate to members where these sites were, but we could have done more, and we acknowledge that. And what we've developed, as I say, at Appendix 4, is a much more comprehensive plan for engagement and consultation. We'll be very clearly telling, we've got a timetable there for telling members any new sites that we plan to take forward. There's also elements there that we will be informing the local communities in those areas where we've got sites that we want to take forward before we actually do anything. So people will have the opportunity to raise any concerns that they've got. I'm not saying that we will necessarily agree with any concerns, because, as I said quite clearly in my introduction, I don't think that aesthetics are the main issue here. We're doing this because we're trying to save the planet, and that's the important thing. But it will give residents the opportunity to raise legitimate concerns, and they will be listened to and considered.
Tony, can I just add in there, please? And elected members, I think people are forgetting what we've been elected to look after the residents of the council, and it's really important what elected members are involved in these from day one.
Absolutely agree with you, Chair, and that's why that they are central to that engagement plan that's attached at Appendix 4. The first step will actually be to inform local members before we go out to the communities. So I think that's important, because you want to know what's happening in your areas before we start telling the public about it. So I hope we've got that element covered. We hold our hands up and agree that we could and should have done more in regard to that. We've rectified it, we've listened to members, and I hope that you are satisfied with the plan that we've got on Appendix 4 on that issue now. The issue the issues that Mervyn were raising, I'm going to hand over to Joel, if that's okay with you, Joel. I know that you've been having a discussion with Mervyn about ragwort already, but I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you for hearing us today. With ragwort, I think it's a really complex issue, isn't it? For our stance on it, it's a really important pollinator, but obviously there are concerns of its impact on livestock. What we've tried to do is kind of come up with a fact sheet that we'll be kind of using on our website to kind of inform people on this. What I would say is that the type of management that we are introducing onto these sites isn't really going to support ragwort proliferating on the sites. It likes quite disturbed ground and bare ground, and the sites that we're kind of management that we're introducing isn't going to encourage that growth. I'd also say that it's a biennial, so it grows in its first year and flowers in its second year. So where we're seeing flowers on the sites that are brought in on their first year, it's an indication that it's not our management that is leading the species to grow. It's already present, and it's and that's just a fact of ragwort. It's a common widespread plant, and we have to take a balanced view of this. A lot of the control measures that we will put in place, or that could be put in place, could make the situation worse. It will regrow from root cuttings, so you've got to be careful when you pull it. It will regrow if you pull the flower heads off it and things like that. So the actual control measures can make the problem worse. And also we don't really have the capacity to deal with it across 60 odd sites that we're dealing with now, and hoping to increase in the future. So we have to take a really balanced case by case view on this. And if there is a serious problem where it's neighbouring onto property where it will be having an issue, then we can certainly look at that. But we look at the evidence behind it that shows the vast majority of seeds don't spread further than 5 meters. We'll take that as the balanced view and make sure that we are kind of complying with codes of practice and things like that. But at the moment, I think the approach we've taken is correct, and I think we're quite comfortable with that at the moment.
Thanks, Joel. Could you just explain why Welsh Government pull all the ragworts along the trunk roads then, please, if Denbighshire's stance is not to deal with it in such a way? And we've also got thistles, which we know blow a long way, and docks as well. Just while you're on that subject, please, Joel, so we can just get out of the way, please.
Yeah, I can't speak for Welsh Government or their approach to this or the Trunk Road Agency on that, because I'm not aware of their policy on it. I just know that in terms of the Weed Act and what that encourages and what that requires, we're compliant with that side of things.
If I could add, Chair, we could certainly ask that question, because we've had representatives before from the Trunk Road Agency who've come to Scrutiny to talk about our joint approach to biodiversity and ecology in relation to highways maintenance. So they've been happy to come to the committee before, and I'm sure they'd be happy to provide a written response to a question on it. We've still got those contacts, if you'd like me to take that forward.
Thank you, Tony.
Chair, can I come back on it when they're finished?
Yes. Mervyn? We lost.
Yeah, I'm here again. Yeah, it's just going back to the bit about engagement with the communities again. It's what you're saying to us, not what we can deal with you. This is what I'm getting from it a little bit. It's like Tony mentioned earlier, telling members, not asking members. Tony. I think there's lessons to be learned here. You shouldn't be telling us. You should be asking and engaging with us as members and the community. That was your words, not mine. And I think, you know, just with the code of practice on Welsh government, we've got in there on page 5 of it the responsibility to prevent the call of spread, prevent and control the spread of ragwort rests with the occupier of the land of which the ragwort is growing. The responsibility applies for ragwort and other weeds specified under the Weeds Act 1959. When seeking to control its spread, it is expected that all landowners, occupiers and managers will cooperate and take a collective response for ensuring the effective control is spread and achieved. You know, I'm just saying that if we're going to engage with the communities that we're working with, we've got to engage with them. It's not just what you think and your officers think. I think you've got to work with them a little bit. I'm not asking you to take everything out. Joel, fair play, sent me a list of a lot of the plant species within the plot in Howell. I can only talk of that one, which there was a lot. I've been and looked at it myself. I'm very pleased, and I think it will improve. But if we want to engage with the communities, we need to engage, not to be told. And if those pictures that I sent in of the ragwort in the one in Howell was over and above what would be expected as just a little bit of ragwort in a plot. So I'm not happy with the response of you telling us, and your decisions of doing it, not engaging with the community. Your idea of engaging with the community sounds to me like telling the community what they will do, not engage with them. Sorry, thank you, Chair.
Can I respond to that, Chair? Is that okay? If I could just clarify what I mean, Mervyn. What I've said when we said we were going to let members know about any future sites that we'd like to take forward. When I say telling members, I mean we'll be telling members which sites we feel are suitable. You know, we'll have looked at a number of sites and assessed them for suitability. So we'll be letting members know which sites we feel are suitable to be added to the project in future years. Now that will enable members to have that discussion with us. If members feel strongly that any of those sites are unsuitable, for me that's a discussion, you know, and it's engagement in you know, because we'll be having, you know, it enables members to have that discussion with us. It's not as telling you we are now taking these forward. We're telling you which sites we think are suitable to be taken forward. I believe we've got a mandate for the project because it was part of the strategy that was adopted unanimously by all members. So I think the mandate for the project is there. So we will talk to you about sites before they're added to the project.
Tony, yeah, you've explained that a lot better and a lot nicer, if I can say, the second time round.
Apologies if that wasn't clear the first time.
And there's no doubt, right, and I'm speaking for all 48 members, right, we're all on board with climate change. But what we want the right conditions and the right for our residents. So swiftly moving on, Glenn Swingler and then Cheryl Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, no, I fully support this wildflower planting scheme. I think it's awesome. I think we need a lot more of them. We do, as generally speaking, people like everything in straight lines and cut down to a certain level. Weeds are just plants that grow somewhere that you haven't planted them, but they're still plants and flowers. On the engagement, what are we doing with the schools to encourage them to get out and have a look and you know, discover what it is we're doing and what this wildflower project is about? Thank you.
Can we say Cheryl next, please?
Yeah, I'm all for this. I'm on the same ward as Brian Blakely, of course, as you know, and we've got some really beautiful areas of meadow, and it's absolutely gorgeous to walk through it sometimes. But I do agree that there's not a lot of consultation happens between us. And maybe when you're saying about telling us, maybe you could ask us what areas we might feel are suitable, like you did with the green areas. That way, you know, you'll get an honest, you know, offer from us that are coming from the residents as well, because we know our residents, we know what they want most of the time. So that might be a better idea, Tony, to look into, you know.
Thanks, Cheryl. I think Cheryl, I think Tony has answered that in. I've got a lot of people coming to wanted to speak. There has been discussion on the communications working forward. Can we, with Glenn's question, please? Can somebody just explain, how are we educating our children, what we're doing in these green spots? I think that's a very fair question, please.
Would you like me to come on that one, Chair?
Thank you.
So initially, when we started the project, we actually ran a competition for the logo design for the school children. And we had over 500 entries from all the kids across Denbighshire to design the logo that would go on the signage in the site. And when we selected the winners, we actually went out to each of the schools and ran sort of sessions with them. We gave them some locally grown wildflower plants and we planted them out and created wildflower areas within the school grounds. So that's been part of the engagement that we've done with them, with the schools. We're looking at doing it again this year with some of the sites we've selected for plug planting, which would benefit from, introducing new species to them. And I've been working with the biodiversity officers to identify schools local to some of these sites to see if the school children would like to be involved in planting out the sites with us and learning about the project firsthand. So that's something that we hope to engage with more in the future as the project develops.
Thank you, Jill. Anybody else within the group wants to ask a question? Graham Timms, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just want to make a couple of points, if I may. The first one, there's been a lot of discussion about the engagement and so on, and I was thinking about this and thinking about the introduction of salt piles in rural areas as an example where I think that the consultation went very well, in that community councils and county councillors were involved in the discussions and made comments on locations of salt piles. And if you compare it to the introduction of this, it's not happened in that way, and I'm pleased that it looks like it's going to in the future. However, I think it's important that we all realise that it's not for a county council or a county councillor or a community council to veto a site. It's a council policy, and if we're behind it, it's not for one councillor to say, oh, I don't want any of these areas in my ward, or a local community saying, I don't want this in this location. No, there's a reason for doing it, and it should be supported without necessarily the support of the local member, although it would be great if all local members could support. And obviously there are other reasons, and Mervyn outlined some of those reasons, but I think it's important that it should not be a veto type consultation where the local councillor can veto this. It has to be a discussion. Just then onto the discussion and the being even more boring, going to the well-being assessment, because looking at that, Tony mentioned a few times in his introduction that what's nice to one person is not nice to another, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And yet on most of the statements in the assessment, it says it's going to be attractive and it's going to be good for the area because it makes it look better and so on. And I think perhaps that's something that needs to be a bit more toned down, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That was boring, I'm sorry. The other one was on page 36, where there are 3 photos: the first year, the second year, and the third year. There's been quite a lot of photos going around over the last few days, and some of them certainly do look like the first year, and it may well be because it is the first year. It looks absolutely amazing on the third year. I hope it's not like an advert. That's the thing that concerns me, the way you see before and after, and it's not been sort of over-egged, because we want to have realistic expectations. So let's hope that those photos, they are nice. Certainly the third one looks very nice, and let's hope that does come about in the future. Not much there for a question, really, Chair, but a few comments anyway.
Thank you, Graham. I'm on the committee, so I'm just going to ask a few questions as well. Why have we put metal signs up in the AONB? could we not be a bit more sympathetic to the AONB? You know, we're under strict planning rules there. That's one question. Why haven't we followed Flintshire way of every roundabout in Flintshire, which I drive through every day? They're so beautiful. Some are blue, some are red, some are green. So we've got every political party there. So why haven't we followed the stance what Flintshire took on this, on doing our roundabouts? I think there's just two questions. Thank you. I won't mention the yellow bins in the yellow salt bins in the AONB, but come on, guys, we need to start looking after the AONB as well. Thank you.
Okay, Chair. I mean, I'm sure Joel will chip in here as well. The signs, the nature of the signs, I can't quite recall why the type of sign was chosen. I don't know if Joel knows anything more about it, but I'm assuming it was partly about longevity of the signage, the material that was chosen. But I'll hand over to Joel. And the roundabout thing, I'm not very familiar with what they're doing with roundabouts in Flintshire. My assumption is that it is, it involves planting and almost a type of gardening on roundabouts, which is different to what we're doing here. I don't know if Joel knows anything more about it, but on those 2 points, Joel, have you got anything to say?
Yeah, I think the signage is just the standardised sort of smallest signage that we could put in place on the sites, but I think that's something we can discuss with operatives in the AONB and make sure that what we're doing is kind of perhaps more in keeping in the future if that is an issue. In terms of the roundabouts, it's something we've discussed previously when we've looked at potential sites, and it's something that we're kind of talking about at the moment as well, because obviously there are visibility issues and things like that related to roundabouts, which are, obviously a real concern. We've got to make sure that road safety is kind of top priority in all of this. So that's been kind of the forefront of what we've been doing with roundabouts. So we've kind of not included those in the project yet, but it doesn't mean we won't going forward. My understanding of the Flintshire sites is that they've kind of been used for pictorial meadows, which is where kind of cornfield annuals are introduced on an annual basis, and that's not something we're looking to do. It doesn't deliver the same biodiversity benefits as what we're trying to do, and it requires quite a lot more management too. So I'd agree with Tony. It's more along the lines of kind of gardening for the aesthetics of it rather than delivering against the goals of what we're trying to achieve here, which is tackling the climate and ecological emergency. And I think when I look at some of the species mixes of those pictorial meadows, you're talking 8 to 15 species, and the vast majority of the sites that we've got, by just changing the management, have got more species than that in. So they don't deliver against the goals that we're trying to achieve, really. So that's kind of the reason we've taken those things. But I've made a note about the signage. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Tony. Right, we'll go on to non-members, if that's okay. Lots of speakers on this. I'm going to start with Emrys Wynne and then Jeanette Chamberlain-Jones, please. So Emrys first, please.
Diolch yn fawr, mae cyfle i'r cyfieithydd.
Thank you. I'll give the translator an opportunity to come in. Thank you for the presentations, Tony, at both Tonys, to be honest, regarding this project. I also, like hopefully the other 47 councillors, am very supportive to this principle of developing wildflower meadows and so on across the county. Could I just mention now, Ruthin to begin with, and I'll throw in a question at the end. I live in Eregoch, and at the bottom of Eregoch, there is a piece of land that's been released and left for growing, but it's just been cut now, and it looks well after being cut. And it actually looked quite well throughout the growing season as well, even though it had become a bit untidy towards the end. It served its purpose. There was a lack of colour, unfortunately, but that was the nature of the plants there. And if the photos that Graham Timms also mentioned, we're hoping for more colour next year and within 3 years, certainly. And I also noticed that there are thistles in the third photograph. Could I then mention another piece of land not too far from where I am now in Bryn Rhydd, where they had problems that Tony would be aware of. A site meeting was held. I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, because I had other commitments, but there was a meeting on the site where the residents were very keen to use it as a useful site for their grandchildren mainly to play there, children in the future. And it had created a problem. They were losing that resource. That is a piece of land that's had a lot of attention in the media during the first lockdown, because the older residents used to hold exercise sessions there under the leadership of one of the residents, and it was quite a sensitive issue at the time. They were offered a compromise at the meeting, but the decision was to clear it all because it was too expensive to maintain these wildflower areas. So I'm asking a question as a result of that. Why can't we have a compromise where that is appropriate? In terms of lack of colour and so on, can't we plant some seeds that will provide colour, because that's what people like to see? I know aesthetics, that is not the aim, I understand that, but if you want to sell an idea to people, we sometimes have to give them an opportunity to say, oh good, I like that and we can keep that. I'm just asking that question, those two questions really. Why can't we have a compromise, and why can't we add colour where that is possible here and there according to the needs? Thank you.
Do you want us to take that question for now, Chair?
Jeanette, can you come in first, and then we'll take the two lots of questions.
Oh, thank you, Chair, for letting me speak. I firstly like to say I'm fully supportive of all the environment issues. My objection is the small pockets of overgrown meadows within small communities, because a lot of the residents find they look untidy and their grandchildren, children are not able to go and play there anymore. So it's just those small pockets that I'm objecting to. But you know, really, I want to say this. We are such hypocrites, aren't we? Really? Because we embrace the emergency of climate change, and yet we are prepared to cut down perfectly good trees that have got TPOs on and ruin the areas to build a fat making factory, food outlet. That also increases all the fumes from car fumes very, very close to residential areas, noise pollution, light pollution. I could go on and on about that, because it does make me really mad that our planning committee can allow, just in my area down the road, 16 fabulous trees, home to lots of birds and wildlife, and we cut them down just because we want to build a McDonald's. Madness, because that's not looking after our climate change. It's also putting a big strain on traffic, and it's also putting a big strain on the NHS because of obesity. And yet we're quite happy to agree to that. Absolute madness we are. And yet we're here arguing about small pockets of land within small communities where they're just asking for them to keep the grass short, so that some children who are not able to play because they haven't got gardens on little patches of green land. Now, why can't we do that? And why can't it be? I disagree with Graham. Why can't it be at the discretion of the local councillor, who knows their areas better than anybody? If they want to plant meadows on these little grass areas, happy to do that. But where residents don't want it, why should it be imposed on them? That's what's maddening about all this. We shouldn't be having this debate, because we really do, Chair. We want climate to deal with climate change, but we are absolute hypocrites because we do it in one way and take it away in another. So to me, we are absolute hypocrites.
Thank you, Jeanette. Speaking from the heart, I can see.
As always, Chair, as always.
Thank you. So there was a couple of questions from Emrys, and I think there was some comments from Jeanette, but thank you. So Tony, do you want to fire away?
Thanks, Chair. I'll start off, and again, I'm sure Joel will chip in. I'll start with the comments from Jeanette. I'm obviously not going to talk about any issues relating to planning committee decisions. That's not for me to get involved in. But the question of these, using these small pockets of land in kind of residential areas, we often have only got small pockets of land to work with in relation to this project. Most land is not available for development as wildflower meadows, so we're already quite restricted on the choices that we've got. I did take on board a comment before about that Cheryl made about asking members for suggestions for future projects. We will do that, of course, as prior to that's been noted down, prior to us identifying the process of the next phase of potential sites. We will ask for those suggestions. Thanks for that, Cheryl. On Emrys's points, and I think Jeanette also touched on this, the kind of the example that Emrys used is the kind of situation with this veto situation that we actually really want to avoid. And I agree with Graham Timms on this matter. The trouble is, if we end up in this veto situation, I think we would lose a lot of the sites we've got, because, as I said, there are sites where we do get objections about them, but it's also true that there are also people in those areas who support them. And I think it becomes a really difficult situation where we may end up just vetoing sites because somebody objects to it, and we lose the real benefit of this project. All these sites, the whole purpose of this project is these sites are connected, and Joel will talk about it much more, in much more detail or with expertise than I can. But I just really worry that by vetoing sites because there are some complaints about it, we miss the whole point of the project, and we fail to deliver the huge benefits that we're seeing. So as I say, I believe that we do have that mandate for the project, and members signed up to it. And I think if members have signed up to the principle of it, then then we shouldn't have this ability to veto sites. As I've said, though, that isn't to say that we're not involved in an engagement process with you. As I said before, when we identify potential sites, we'll inform you what they are, and we will have a conversation with members if they feel really strongly that a site is inappropriate, and we'll explore the reasons why, and we'll have that debate. But I don't think it should be a veto situation. Joel, have you got any other comments on those questions, or the colour thing as well? I didn't mention.
Yeah, I was going to mention the colour thing. So over time, with the type of management that we're doing, what we're doing is we're pulling nutrients out of the grasslands. So you're getting less dominance of the grasses, and it's creating more space for the wildflowers to grow. So over time, we're seeing increases in species even over the course of a single season. So that will happen naturally. But on some of the sites where they're perhaps a little bit more isolated, or they don't have they don't have the kind of species present in them already, which a lot of these do, we are looking at introducing plug plants that we've grown from local provenance. So we've been out and collected seed, and then we've handed this over to the Woodland Skills Centre. We've had a bit of a project with the team up there, and they work with people that are working with them from our social services and prescribing to grow on these plants, and then we take them back at the end of the season and plant them out on sites. So we did that previously at County Hall, was one of the first sites we trialled with this, but we've done it on a number of sites, and we've given out plants to community councils to improve their areas and create bee-friendly sites. We're looking to expand that at the moment, and the aim is from next year to be growing about 5,000 local provenance wildflowers that we can then add into these sites, just to, primarily to increase the biodiversity value of them and to, create habitat for pollinators and improve the sites under the new management. But yeah, that will improve the kind of visual appeal of them as well, I suspect. So it is something that's going to happen. But what I'd say is that these things take time. We're looking at this as a long-term kind of project, and habitat management and changes don't happen overnight. I compare it to our tree planting program. We plant the trees at sort of 40 to 60 centimeters high. We have to give them a long time to grow into sizable trees and really deliver the benefits. And it's the same here. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And I do think you'll notice these sites improving over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Joel.
Let's get back to that.
Who's that? Sorry.
Yeah, it's Emirates. Can I come back on just on the responses?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Joel. I've heard about the colours. I'm happy with your response there. Local provenance plug-in plants would be ideal, I'm sure, and it would go down well in terms of the aesthetics. And I do think there is room for aesthetics, although the report suggests it's not all about aesthetics. Can I just mention about the veto? I don't believe that there was a veto put in place as far as Bryn Rhyd is concerned. From the local members' point of view, I think a compromise was a possibility. It was an officer decision, I believe, not to put the wildlife areas within the cut grass area, which could have come out in the other area where we had the complaints. That was funny though. There were no complaints about the site in Erugorch. We did have complaints about Bryn Rhyd. I live bang on in between those two sites. It's so funny. That's it's so different. The responses from the two areas are so different. I've actually had a complaint this week, by the way, tongue in cheek, I believe, about the grass having been cut outside one of the houses because she was looking forward to seeing the wildflowers growing there as well, which is, there we are. So, yes, I don't believe we need to have a veto up in Bryn Rhyd. A compromise would have been good. I'm trying to avoid the word engagement, but I think that's where it should all begin. Thank you.
Right, moving on quickly. Anne Davis, Martin Holland, then Meirig, and then I've got Glenn at the end. Is that okay? Thank you. Anne Davis, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd, am y gwahoddiad i'r cyfarfod ac y cyfle i siarad bore yma.
For the invitation to the meeting and for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Of planting wildflowers and biodiversity, climate change, etc. In fact, I have supported 2 wildflower meadows in Rhydlan, plus the grass verges, for lots of grass verges in Rhydlan have wildflower planting. The wildflower meadow at Plas Lorna by Bryn Gwybr is very successful and produces some very nice daisies. The other one at Maes Bedwen has been completely ignored by Denbighshire, and the wildflowers are now completely overgrown with untidy grass. So that's not been a successful area. Perhaps it's something the officers could look at. I'd like to touch on the next project in Nant Close. And I would like to give you, especially Tony and Joel, a little bit of background of what this area consists of. It's a lovely residential area with a circle of bungalows around it. Majority of these residents are elderly. And there is one who's nearly 100 years of age. One of her little pleasures is sitting in the lounge and watching the world go by. Now, all she can see is maybe 2 foot of grass. That's taken away a little bit of her happiness. We also have carers there who are very limited on their being able to leave the cared for. Now, one carer in particular finds great relaxation in looking after a front garden, which is perfectly laid out, not a weed in the lawn. Now, we've got all these weeds and so forth blowing onto her lawn. Now, that's really upset them. Now then, we have in Denbighshire, I don't know if it's a policy, but listening to the community. Listening to the community. Now then, this has not been adhered to. Neither has the Wellbeing Act 2015 or the older people's rights. What disappoints me here mostly this morning is a lack of empathy from officers and how these residents feel about their daily life. One day you may be in that position. It's difficult for you to understand what these older people are going through. Many of these people in this area now, retired farmers, and you're talking about engaging with them to tell them all about wildflowers and so forth. Well, they know all about the bees and the birds and the bees, whatever the thing. The one lady has had a mouse in her garage, which has gnawed its way into her bedroom, so she tells me. So yeah, I'm really disappointed about the lack of consultation from officers with residents, well, lack of, listen. And I was only told when the project was up and running, again, total lack of respect and consideration. I know my residents, in particular the older people, and I would urge the committee this morning to show compassion and reject the Nans Close project for the sake of the well-being and the health of these residents. There's been a petition raised and only one resident in Nans Close was in favour of this wild planting. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Anne. Swiftly moving on to Councillor Holland, and then we'll take the two lots of questions if that's okay, Tony.
Thank you.
Holland, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Yeah, again, in principle, I have no problem with this. And actually, I live in a rural area, and most of our verges are full of wildflowers, and we do have bee-friendly areas. But if I was living in an urban area and I was overlooking a plot of ground in the centre of that area, and it was now full of high grass, I would be very disappointed by that activity or lack of activity. I would also have concerns, and even in this area, at the beginning of the year, most of the verges and the green areas are covered in dandelions. And I know that once those dandelions have flowered and seeded, all the local residents are busy trying to dig them out of their gardens because they've seeded in their actual gardens themselves. So I think we have to keep that in mind. So I think it's about compromise and flexibility, not about stopping the whole project, but at least listening to some residents about their concerns. And we've heard that you're going to do that, so that's okay. One other issue, though, is road safety. In my area, my concern is road safety. I contacted the council back in July in relation to one of the wildfire meadows in Llanferris. The grass had grown to at least 2 feet high, and I was sent a video recording of a car leaving Rectory Lane, and as they looked to the left, cars were disappearing behind the high grass. I asked the county to look into this because I felt it was a health and safety issue, and did say that at the time we needed to cut that grass quite quickly before there was an accident. They said yes, they would do it, but nothing happened until this month when the whole of the area was cut as part of this annual cut. I did point out to officers at the time that once I'd reported this as an accident black spot potentially, we should have acted sooner, because if there had been an accident because somebody couldn't see a vehicle approaching them, then we would have been in serious trouble as a county council. So I just make that point as well. So what I'm saying here is, flexibility, a little bit of flexibility. Don't want to stop this project by any means. Consultation, yes, and consultation with local councillors is important. None of us were really consulted about areas within our wards. And we just need to make sure that people are happy with this. That picture that Brian Blakely has behind him looks marvellous. And if you see a wildflower meadow, that's how it should look. Sadly, most of them at the moment are just full of, long grass, which doesn't
The one
look
Brian
good.
is showing is a pictorial meadow, not the ones used in Denbighshire. That
No,
is
I
a
know.
Flintshire one.
I know.
Just
Jeanette,
so
yeah.
everybody doesn't think we should all have meadows like that here, because that's not going to happen. That's pictorial.
I know, Jeanette. Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's my point. But I think as consultation, yes, please, but let's listen if we are consulting.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Anne. Tony, do you want to kick off with probably Anne's questions? Really, I am sympathetic with Martin Holland. It's my local pub, and yeah, it is a job to come out of there, even when you've had just a Coca-Cola as well. But thank you, Tony.
I'll try and unpick some of this, Chair, starting with Councillor Ann Davis. I think that the point you made about one area which you feel needs to be looked at because you think it's excessively untidy, I'm sure that will be noted down, and Joel will work with somebody in my team to have a look at it. And the main point you're making was around Nant Close, and I do, and we do acknowledge and understand that some people really don't like the way that these sites look. I do get that, and I do have empathy with people about it. But I do believe that we need to look at the bigger picture here as well. And as I said, this is about ecology, and it's about tackling climate change. My personal view is that is the most important aspect of this discussion. We don't want places to look really messy and really horrible. I don't believe that they do. And believe it or not, there are a lot of people who agree with us on that. And we do get a lot of correspondence from people congratulating us and thanking us for the work we're doing, because they love it. They don't just love it because of the ecology aspect. They like the way they look as well. We know that we're not going to get agreement from everybody on this. And I think we need to accept and acknowledge that. If we're trying to strive to get 100% agreement and approval and everybody's support for this project, then we're not going to achieve that.
Can I just stop you for 1 minute, if I may?
Yes.
Obviously, Councillor Ann Davis spoke that there had been a petition from residents.
Yes.
Should we not maybe compromise and reduce the size of this site and any other problem sites, rather than saying no? I think we need to compromise, because the majority of the sites don't seem to be any problems. I know Councillor Holland has the problem with the visibility, which I agree with. But why can't we compromise on the problem sites by reducing the size, not getting rid of it totally, but just reducing the size, rather than just saying no. That's
Joel will chip in here as well, I'm sure. But we do look and have those conversations, Chair, and we do look at those options where they're possible. Generally speaking, it tends to be only on the larger sites where that's possible, because if you're on a site that's too small, once you start doing that, it's not worth doing at all, because it's too much like hard work. It's too much work for the operatives to go around doing little bits, tiny bits of smaller sites in two different management styles. So where there's a site that is big enough, we can and do discuss options around compromise, and we have implemented compromise positions on some sites. The petition you mentioned at Nant Close, obviously we considered and did respond to it. This is where Joel will come in, because Joel knows he was much more directly involved. But we've tried to engage with that community to try and discuss it with them, set up meetings with them to discuss it. But Joel, do you want to talk about that site in particular?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, this site, I know that we've had complaints about. I think the initial complaint that came in was that the board hadn't been managed properly. So we went back and dealt with that, and we didn't hear anything then until the petition came out. We've since spoken to a few residents about it who have kind of obviously don't like the way the site looks, but as we've said before, we're not doing this for the aesthetics, and we do think that will probably improve subjectively over time as well with the management that we're bringing in. What I would say is we've really tried to engage with the residents in this instance to get them involved in the project to understand it a little bit more. So the signage has gone up to identify what we're doing and explain why we're doing it. It's got our contact information on there. We actually went to run a Zoom webinar about the project where residents with direct concerns could ask questions on that. We ran that event, and I don't think any of the residents actually, I think they showed interest in the run up to it and signed up to the event, but I don't think anyone actually attended on the day. So we haven't done that, but it's on our list of sites to plant with some of the plug plants that we've got from the Woodland Skills Centre as well, to try and deal with the aesthetic side of it. But again, we work with Street Scene operationally on these sites to make sure that what we're doing is going to benefit biodiversity, but also work from a kind of operations point of view. And as Tony says, when you start to reduce the size of some of these sites, it becomes ineffective at what we're trying to achieve here. This site was put forward as well because there's a couple of other smaller corners of grass in that area where we haven't taken within the project. So yeah, I think we have looked at compromises on other sites where we've been really clear that there is an alternative recreational use, and yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this one at the moment.
The only thing I would add, Chair, is that as kind of I alluded to before, there are other sites in the project where we have had similar representations from residents and some residents and complaints about them, saying that they're not suitable because of their location. And now actually those sites are accepted in those communities, and have actually seen some of the best results that we've seen with some of the rarest species being spotted in them. So I think that's the difficulty, I think, for us is just responding by removing sites because we get some complaints. It isn't necessarily the thing to do, but we are trying to engage with those communities where we are seeing more complaints, and there are only a few, there are a few of them, but we're trying our best to deal with them. And we will, as Joel said, we can compromise if a site lends itself to compromise, largely on the scale of it. That's kind of where we are with it.
Okay. Around in circles here at the moment. So yeah, I do feel the frustration for some of these ratepayers of Denbighshire, who pay thousands of pounds in rates, and I think we should be working with them a lot better than what we are. That's my view, not the committee so far. Martin Holland had a question about, he reported an issue with visibility. I can support this issue. Why wasn't that dealt with? And in the future, can we look at a better visibility and doing maybe an audit on visibility on a lot of these sites, please?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Chair, I have to be honest, off the top of my head, and I'll have to go away and speak to my team about how that report was assessed and acted upon, and I will do that, and I will provide a response once I've done that. Road safety is obviously of paramount importance.
Okay, I'll move on swiftly to Cynghorydd Meirug Lloyd Davies, wedyn sydd byn y ddau o'ch gilydd, Glenn Swingler hefyd, y ddau o'ch gilydd wan. So Meirug.
So Councillor Meirug Lloyd Davies and then Councillor Glenn Swingler. Well, thank you once again, Chair. You're very patient this morning. Thank you also for the reports. I must say before I start, I have been trying to get a discussion with officers in other committees, and it's been thrown out. So the chairs have refused to accept. But today I was told, I'll bring it to this committee. Well, with all respect to the chair, this isn't where I'm able to raise the issue, because I want to discuss rural areas and rural roads. But that isn't the discussion today. It's to do with villages. But I've looked at the report and I'd like to raise one or two issues. You've got page 20 under point 4, 4.3. You mention cutting that you cut the sides. There are no measurements there. You should give measurements so that the officers know exactly what they're supposed to cut and not just leave it for the person who's responsible for cutting the grass. And moving on, there should also be a map. Every town council or community council, they should have a map of showing where these locations are. We had problems in Trevenant because of that, and I'm now looking forward for these maps to come to every community council and so on. In Appendix 2, you mention emptying rubbish bins and for them to be emptied accordingly. What if they're full? You don't say that you will empty between the dates that you have specified for collection. If it's full and overflowing, you should be emptying it, and that should be down so that officers know where they stand. If we then move on to page 38, Appendix 4, you very kindly say from January to the autumn, but you don't say which year. Are you going to start this year, next year, or when? That it's very convenient not to state which year you're going to begin. A very interesting point was raised by Councillor Mervyn Parry regarding ragwort. And fair play to Mervyn, he has drawn attention to law, not Denbighshire law, but 1959 law that we are supposed to destroy ragwort, but according to the report we've had this morning from the officer, they choose not to cooperate with the Act for some reason. I don't know why. I thought we had to keep to acts, and especially the county's laws, according to what you've said this morning. So I'm looking forward to changing that. And I think I've got no objection to wildflowers growing. It would be a good idea, I think, in the garden to save having to mow every other week. Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the officers. Councillor Glenn Swingler next, please.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of points and a question. First thing is Denby and Bloom, who do a lot of the planting and everything in the town, well, most of the planting, all the planting in the town. They do the roundabouts, and they do that with the support of the county council, you know, who allow them to go on there. The picture behind me is one of those roundabouts in Denby. It's, yeah, so there is work going on, but it's Denby and Bloom that are doing that, but they do get full support from Denbighshire County Council to do so, as well as everything else they do in the town. Second point is around, we all seem to like wildflower meadows growing, and we all believe that it should be done, but not in my backyard seems to be the point with a lot of people. So, you know, I like to see flowers grow. I like to see them growing wild. I just like to see it. You know, this isn't garden rescue. Plants and flowers take time to grow, and we've got to give them time to grow as well. And when the summer comes, you know, that sort of May, June, July, August time, they can look fantastic. My question is around land that doesn't belong to council. Tony probably knows about in Denby behind the retail park, that where they built the retail park, they left some land behind it. Now the plants, the flowers have all been left to just overgrow there, and they look fantastic in the summer. The problem is that there is nobody to pick up all the litter that is left behind as they walk between the shops down the back road onto Mill Road. So I was just wondering if there's any way we can ask council to help clear that up, and just so that the plants can grow and look their very best throughout the summer. But that's my point, that we need more of these. I think they look fantastic. It's not just about the plants and the flowers, it's about the wildlife that lives amongst them all as well. And that creates life. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Tony, can I ask you to take that issue up with litter with Glenn's ward directly with him after the meeting or when it's convenient? So I think Mairig had a few questions in there. So if we just answer them, please.
Yes, no problem. I was going to suggest that, Chair, on that point. Measurements of the cut border, not off the top of my head, but there will be. Joel, do you know, is there a specific measurement on that activity?
It's normally a mower's width, but we haven't left a specific thing in there because the lay of the land on some of the sites sort of dictates where it should be and where it works effectively. So if you take Plas Lorna, for example, there's a flat bit right adjacent to the road that's perhaps 2 mowers width, and then it goes up a steep slope. So, you know, for kind of continuity and things like that, we've kind of kept the flat bit completely mowed, and it just makes it look managed. And that's the intention here, is to show that this is a real chosen activity rather than abandonment of management. So it varies on site to site, but it's always at least a mower's width.
Okay, thanks, Joel. The map issue, we have mapped these sites, I believe, Joel, another one for you, and haven't they?
Yes. Yeah, the maps published on our website. So there's a wildflower project page on the council's website, and that's accessible to anyone. And it does have a map on it where you can look in every ward, and it's got the outline of each of the areas that are included within the project.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
I've added the link into the Zoom chat for members.
Thank you, Helen. It's useful. The issue about bins and emptying them, our litter bins in Denbighshire are emptied on a schedule across the county, depending on how often they need to be emptied. From our experience, if bins are full more frequently, then we're currently emptying them on a schedule, and we're getting reports of that. Clearly, we will go and empty that bin if we get a report of it overflowing. And if we're getting reports that those bins are overflowing regularly because we're not doing it often enough, we'll amend the schedules. So please report those issues, to customer services, because that's how we get the evidence to show that we need to amend our schedules for these things. So please do that. Sorry, Merrick, I didn't actually catch the next point that you said. There was something about some dates or a range of dates on a page in the report, and I've missed which bit of the report you were referring to.
I think I can answer that one.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was going to say it's an ongoing program, so they're done on an annual basis, sort of going forward. So it's not specifically a year thing, because the project doesn't have a kind of end date to it. It's just a cycle of what we would do each year. So it's ongoing currently, and will be going forward as well.
Okay, thanks, Joel. And there was
yeah, good. Moving on.
Diolch yn fawr, Parchus Gadeirydd, am yr atebion.
Diolch. There's a lot
Thank
of.
you for the answers.
I'm not sure if you've left them up from last time. If you haven't, just switch them off.
Mae gen I gwestiwn yn y dro.
Okay, can I also welcome Dr. Kate Petty, who has been patiently sitting there with her hand up the whole time. So I'm going to give you priority now over the members, and we'd love to hear what you've got to say, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Mae'n pleser mawr ymuno chi heddiw.
Thank you, Chair. It's a great pleasure to join you today.
What Plant Life is and my role with Plant Life. Plant Life has been running a campaign for around a decade now to save wildflowers on road verges, and to provide advice and guidance to councils. And I hope a few things that I will say as shortly as I can in order to enable the meeting to continue will help to answer some of the questions that you've brought up today, and also give my support to the project. In my professional opinion, the Wildflower project that the council has running is one of the flagship wildflower projects across the whole of the United Kingdom at the moment. Of course, that doesn't mean that it comes with its challenges and its issues, but there are ways of management that can help to address some of the issues that you are facing. And I've already had some great conversations with both Joel and his team as well. A few things that I wanted to touch upon, especially as we're talking here about residential and urban areas. We often think, and perhaps the traditional meadow that we might envisage is tall vegetation. It doesn't necessarily mean that short grass isn't wildlife friendly. There are ways of managing a grassland to create what we would call a short turf that is full of low-growing wildflowers. And it might be that in some of your residential areas that shorter grassland that is managed a bit more regularly, but not as frequently as it is currently managed, might work as a balance and compromise in some of those areas. And I know the team, through the investment in the machinery that you have made, would help to bring about that approach, which is a different way of managing it, but also brings you those benefits in terms of the plants that are growing, but those benefits to pollinators and people and the planet too, which given you've declared both the climate and ecological emergencies and you have your well-being programs as well, is something that of course can't be ignored. This type of cutting regime to create a short turf would require less cutting and less cutting over time as well as the site develops through using the sort of cut and collect machinery that you have. This would both help to reduce the carbon dioxide from emissions, but it would also mean that you'd be cutting less. So the residents would see less of the mowers around them, and then reductions in air pollution as well. This short turf wildlife friendly approach isn't suitable for all areas, and the taller wildflower meadows that you were developing on other sites really are sort of the cream of the crop, really, in another sense. And it's really fantastic to see, as it was brought up a bit earlier, about the comparisons between what Flintshire is doing next door. In terms of Denbishire's approach, it really is sort of the gold standard in terms of restoration and conservation of wildflowers. That's not to say that pictorial meadows don't have their place, but for your situation and for what you would like to achieve in Denbishire, this approach, your approach in Denbishire, would really help you to capture the unique flora of your area and really support that wonderful local natural character that you have as well. So we are fully supportive of that, of plant life. And I just wanted to add my support to all of the discussions around consultations and engagements. There are other examples from other councils in using different technologies to ask local communities to input where they would like to see meadows as well. And there's lots of different approaches that I'd be more than happy to share with the officers as well, and offer our support as Plant Life as your project continues, and wish you the best of luck with it. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, diolch Kate, thank you very much. We're just going on, I've got 2, 4, 6 speakers, and then I'm going to close the debate. We've had a good debate on this. I'll just try and pick out who hasn't spoken first. So we'll go to Hugh Irving and Peter Scott, please.
Thank you. Balada, everybody. It's good to come in on this first attendance at this committee to such a passionate debate. Well, we're here to scrutinise, and I think scrutinise we certainly have. And quite clearly, members have raised concerns of their own and concerns of their residents, and that's right and proper. And I don't think it's just the correct or right thing for officers to slap down those comments. But I hope they will realise today that after this scrutiny, that there are concerns out there. They will assure us that they will take them on board, that they will consult local members regarding any amendments or work in their individual wards, so that we can all go forward with this project in a spirit of harmony. I wonder really, and I know it's not perhaps the job for the wildflower project, but what are we doing about the wholesale concreting over of gardens in many of our residential areas? Not far from where I'm sitting now, a garden of a very attractive bungalow has been concreted over. There are 12 vehicles on it, much to the annoyance of the residents round about, and enforcement over a period of years seem unable to do anything about it. But you know, there is a huge trend to concreting over gardens. It's removing lawns, it's removing bushes, shrubs, whatever, and havens for wildlife. Where is building control? Where is planning where this is happening? So that would be something that I would add into the debate. But as far as this committee is concerned, I hope we're going to get very full two-way consultation between members and officers after today's debate. Thank you.
Oh, Peter, you there still?
Sorry. Yeah, still here, Chair. Sorry, I'll just turn my screen off sometimes. The mic doesn't work if I leave it on. Listening to the debate, yeah, very interesting, very good. I'm just wondering, I don't want to drag the meeting on any longer, but when we come to recommendations, Chair, could we do 3.1? Could we just add to the end of 3.1 with the agreement of local residents and county councillors after consultation? So we know we are going to do that.
Yeah, you're on the committee, so I'll give the committee members a chance to come in with the recommendations nearer the time. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. Thank you very much. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
So, Tony, well, there was no questions there, just mostly statements, really, and we'll wait for the recommendations on that. I've got Emrys Wynne, Brian Blakely, Martin Holland, and Anne Davis. So, Emrys and Brian, let's get to the point. I hope the new questions, we don't want repeat of any other questions. So, Emrys and then Brian, thank you.
No, this
is just information, not a question. Of interest to you, Chair, and also to Councillor Martin Holland and others who represent rural areas. I was in Pembrokeshire in June, and the county obviously have been planting wildflower seeds everywhere. But every gate to every field had been cleared carefully both sides to ensure that every tractor or car could go in and out safely, and I think that's a pattern that maybe Denbighshire could follow for the future. Thank you, Emrys.
You there, Brian? You're on mute, Brian, sorry.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. Yeah, I was trying to get on mute, you wouldn't let me. Yeah, just a quick one to go back and what was said before regarding not in my backyard. It's just a quick quote, Chair, just to say that we seem to be getting here. If we didn't have our wildflower meadows, then we would not certainly would be running into difficulties with our butterflies, bees. I think we've lost most of our grasshoppers that I used to remember as a child, and our crickets, and was complaining about mice. I remember home when I was a young kid, where I lived in West Kirby, surrounded by fields, and we had field mice all over the place. They didn't bother us, didn't do any harm, and it was lovely to know that we had the wildlife around us. We seem to be arguing the facts here and worrying, and people are complaining about these wildflower meadows. We need to have wildflower meadows, otherwise we're no longer going to have butterflies or bees. If we don't have bees, they will not be able to pollinate, and we'll not be having any flowers or fruit in the future. Just to put that into the pot and mix it up, I'll leave it with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brian. I think we're all in agreement of that. It's just getting to the nitty gritty. Martin Holland, then Anne Davis, and then we're closing the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again. Just to clarify a point for Tony, when I talked about the visibility issues in Llanferris, we didn't ask for the whole of the area to be cut. We just asked for it to be cut far enough back to improve the visibility, which so we could have left the meadow in front of the church. So just to clarify that, I was very interested in Kate's comments about, you know, perhaps managing some of these areas a little better. You're right. If we've got grassland growing, often grassland will overcome any flowers. And so if some of it can be cut down, 2-foot high grassland is not a flower meadow. So, you know, can we look at that? That's a question. Can we do more to manage the meadows? And then finally, a question again, we do have other areas that we could do work in. And those areas are things like where we've got improved roads. We've often left sections of old road on the side. I've got 2 or 3 of those areas in my ward, certainly as you will know on the A494. I know it's a trunk road, but there are stretches of road that have now been abandoned, and we could be planting trees or wildflowers in those areas. I have a number of old county quarries in my ward, you know, some of them going back to the 1800s. Could we do more with some of those to create them into wildflower havens and plant trees? And finally, I also have a large number of abandoned quarries in my ward. I think of Pistol Gwyn Quarry, which there will be nothing will happen with that quarry in the future. It's now been, you know, closed. But there's a good area of land in there that if it was given just a little bit of rough topsoil, it could be seeded. And wildlife and bees and other things, you know, could, you know, flourish in those old quarries. So I just raise that as well. Are we talking to some of the quarry owners to see if we could do more to actually improve those quarries as wildlife habitats? Thank you.
Anne Davis, please. Anne there or not? Yeah. You're on mute, sorry, Anne. Yeah.
There we are. Diolch yn fawr, Mr. Cadeirydd. I just want to ask Tony Joel a question regarding the very large nature reserve we have in Rhydlan. Why haven't you considered planting flowers there? Had the consultation taken place with the residents and the local councillors, this land close project would not have gone ahead. So again, I would urge you, Tony, to relook at this area of wild planting for the sake of those older residents. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got a statement of Anne and the question of Martin. Are we looking at we definitely need to work a lot closer with the just one meeting, please. We definitely need to work a lot closer with the trunk road agents, who are in charge of the road from Mould right through to Corwen, the A5, and I'm sure down the coast there's a lot of areas where they're not doing what we're doing in Denbighshire. We definitely need to sit around the table with them. So question for Martin, are we doing anything with these quarries and redundant bits of road, probably trunk roads again? Thank you.
I think to summarise a lot of those questions, Chair, there are things that we perhaps need to go away and discuss, but some of them are covered by the comment that we made, the commitment we made earlier about asking members for suggestions on potential future sites. That's been mentioned a couple of times. So I think we may have covered that issue there to some extent. Obviously, Chair have said that we will make contact with the North and Mid Wales Trunk Road Agency to have a discussion about their approach to this, and we'll get some feedback from them. Martin's comments about the management of the meadows, I don't know if Joel wants to come in on that.
Which point was that? Sorry, the reduced height cutting.
Yes,
is an option. Yeah, that's certainly an option. I mean, one of the reasons we haven't done it, I think Dr. Petty kind of mentioned, you know, what we're doing at the moment is really the stuff that's going to have the greatest impact and provide the greatest benefit. There are operational issues around reduced height sort of meadows, because you're still having to cut them throughout the season to maintain that reduced height, and you have to deal with the collection of the cuttings that you do, so it's on a more regular basis. So at this point, as we're kind of bringing the project forward, you know, we're keen not to overload Tony's team and the operatives with a huge management burden. So it's something that we have intended to look at, and that we will work with Plant Life on going forward to get their advice where it's been used elsewhere, and to really understand that issue and that option, because I think certainly in some of the visibility displays, for example, it would be a really good option to kind of represent a compromise that still delivers for biodiversity and the ecological emergency that's been declared.
Chair, I can come back on Councillor Holland's suggestion about quarries, if that's helpful.
Yeah, by the way, let's-
Yeah, so the existing county quarries that are in our land ownership already, they are part of a review of all of our grassland land ownership to look at how it can contribute to the climate and ecological agenda. So it could be tree planting, it could be creation of calcareous grasslands, which is what wildflower meadows sort of fall under. It could be a mix of both. So they're being looked at. The abandoned quarries, I'd be really interested, Martin, to know where they are in your ward, and who is the landowner, or who we think might be the landowner, because equally we're looking at further opportunities around that. So yes, it is being looked at. Interested to hear about your abandoned quarries. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I'm sure Martin will be in touch, and I'm sure you'll be in touch with local members to discuss your thoughts on their what's involved in their wards. I've just been, thank you ever so much, great debate. I think Merig, o'n i 'di cau
Mae'n ddrwg gynna i, ond ges i mateb i'r...
I'm sorry, I didn't get an answer with regards to adhering to the 1959 Act. The answer wasn't satisfactory the first time.
Answer that, please.
Would you like me to answer that? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So the 1959 Act simply places into legislation that the ministers have powers to issue a control order for ragwort. So it doesn't state that we need to remove it or to destroy it, and that's not the kind of emphasis on the kind of more recent policies and things as well. So all it does is basically give the ministers power to serve us notice to act, and we would be committing an offence if we didn't comply with that notice when served it, but we haven't been served any notices. So that's what the 1959 legislation relates to when it comes to the Weeds Act.
Right, okay.
Diolch, Mr. Cadeirydd.
Diolch, Mary. Without a big debate on that, but I'll move swiftly forward. Before we start looking at recommendations to add to the recommendations as well, I'd just like to highlight some of the stuff that's been raised as the committee's gone along. There seems to be a big concern, which we need to listen to, about weeds. The weeds being the ragworts, thistles and docks. We're all in agreement on the climate change. There's not one of us are against it. We want the best for our county, and we want the best for our residents. Communication has obviously not worked. Communication with councillors hasn't worked. We need to work closer with our elected members and residents. We also need to work a lot closer with the AONB and the trunk roads. So I'm going to hand over to Graham Timms, and we're going to find some recommendations. So that's my recommendations. I would like to put in that we control the weeds, Graham. Graham will be summing up on the conditions. Control of those 3 named weeds. Communications with councillors and residents need to be a lot stronger, and we need to work a lot closer with the AONB and the trunk road agencies throughout Denbighshire. So I'm going to hand over to Graham now to sum up. So Graham's going to take any comments, what you have, but only members from inside the committee. I won't allow members from outside the committee, only members from inside the committee. Graham, do your best.
Okay, I'll have a go. Yeah. On the first recommendation, I think that's probably okay as it is. Peter, I know, mentioned that he wanted to change that, but maybe the second recommendation, I would suggest the following, and maybe people won't think it's strong enough, and that's a debate we can have. But I would suggest that 3.2 becomes. Sorry, I ought to say what 3.1 is for the sake of the webcast and so on. 3.1 that the committee confirms its support for the principle that residential urban areas can be appropriate locations for wildflower meadows. I think we've all agreed that anyway. 3.2, I would like to suggest supports and then remove the proposals so it reads supports improved engagement and publicity, and then it says with local members, community councils and communities for the project, and that be between officers for the project to strengthen that community. Maybe that's not strong enough. Maybe other people will want to suggest other things, but that doesn't go as far as a veto, but it talks about a constructive dialogue between those members. The third one that Hugh mentioned, maybe we could add a recommendation that there's a dialogue between the Trunk Road Agency and the County Council in regard to dealing with, I don't know if weeds is a good enough term, because that's probably more general if you want to specify.
I think the whole system, they come along and they just smash it to pieces all the way along, and it's very important what we work with the AONB with this as well.
So that the council works with the AONB and Trunk Road Agency on dealing with weeds.
Yeah, I'd liked the ragworts and the thistles on all the sites which have been named in the document today to be controlled in a better way than they are already.
Okay. And I think that will take some working out, won't it, first of all, because
it will, but it's important what we have it in.
Okay, so would you like to suggest some words on that one?
Yeah, that the recommendation is that the control of the free ragworts, thistles and docks are dealt with in a better way than they are already. Communications with the councillors, which you've raised on, and obviously the working with the AONB and the trunk roads on having a better understanding and a better way of working for everybody.
So that the council works with the Trunk Road Agency and the AONB to improve the way that ragwort, thistles and docks are dealt with.
And how the grassland is managed in these areas, because the Welsh Trunk Road agents come along and they just cut it right down to nothing. And it's just so frustrating what Denbighshire are trying our best, but they're going back and absolutely not doing what we're doing. It's very frustrating. You've got a lot of people putting hands up there.
Chair, I'm just wondering, do you want to split those into two separate recommendations then?
Should we vote on the first one first?
And the Trunk Road Agency, and the one to do with those three named weeds.
Yeah. Should we get rid of the first one first, Graham?
Yeah. Is that a sensible way to proceed to sort of go through a list? Yeah. So, well, the first recommendation, I don't think. Or confirms its support for the principle that residential urban areas can be appropriate locations for wildflower meadows.
Everybody in agreement with that? Yeah, show of hands, everybody. Yeah, that's passed.
Okay. The second one was an amended 3.2, which says supports improvement, engagement and publicity between officers, local councillors, community councils, perhaps we ought to say community town and city councils there, and communities. Bearing in mind the discussion about the engagement, that's not been quite as good as we would have liked.
Okay.
Can I very quickly interfere though? Just say I really think we should be saying more along the lines of officers must engage with, you know, to make it very clear, because I think the message quite clearly from this committee today is being that, you know, there's been concerns about the engagement and consultation. So I'd like to see that be clearly spelt out that they must engage and consult. Just a thought, Graham.
Okay, so supports, how would we word it then? That the committee
feels that more communication within the local community, elected members, community council, town councils, and public.
Could request that officers
Residents.
improve engagement and publicity with local members, community, town and city councils and residents.
Yeah.
It's just making it more emphatic, that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Get the communication going.
I'd like to see the word must somewhere in there.
Yeah. So it could read, the committee believes that officers must engage with.
Yeah. Happy.
Yeah.
Happy.
Better.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
Local members, community, town and city councils and communities.
Yeah, everybody's
Yeah.
thumbs up.
I second that.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's happy with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's a third one. I think you're going to have to help now, Hugh, because these probably will get more contentious as we go on.
Yeah, okay, Mervyn, can you come in with the weeds? You're the expert with weeds, but they need controlling.
Well, yeah, hang on, let me put my screen on. I think this is where, again, where we need the engagement from the officers on various.
You're on mute. Sorry, Mervyn.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is somewhere where we come back to this communication and engagement with the officers, because some sites aren't as bad as others and some sites are, and I think that we need to have reasonable control of the noxious weeds or that are on some of these sites, you know, and specifically for me, you know, would be the ragwort and the thistles. And if we've got docks in some of them, then and they're a problem, then we need to deal with them. But the thistles are blowing weeds, you know, as the ragwort is an unsightly one for a lot of the rural residents anyway, in the, you know, in the urban parts of their villages. So I just think that we need to have something that we have the option to control them if needed.
Yeah, if I may, and Joel might have a view here. I think that phrase "reasonable control," I don't know if Joel agrees, is quite a useful one, because I think I've seen correspondence with Joel and probably between Joel and Mervyn before, where Joel has talked about, you know, site-specific controls where necessary. So Joel,
yeah. That's right. I think that's right, and I think that, you know, we've got to come up with some sort of risk assessment based on the documentation that's out there at the moment as well, because obviously sites in the middle of an urban setting where they're not near to pasture or other areas where the.
Can I just stop you? The committee's making recommendations, not officers. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We need control of those free weeds throughout the county.
Yeah. Yes, that could be a proposal. I'm uneasy about accepting that myself. I don't know about other committee members, because I don't know the situation and I don't want to vote on something.
Should we go to a vote on that and then first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So your proposal was that.
My proposal is what we control the named free weeds, which I know was ragwort, thistle, and dock leaves in these areas. So I'd like to propose that we put it in what these weeds are removed or dealt with in these sites because they're unsightly. That's my proposal. And have I got a seconder? Brian Blakely, seconder. And do we come over show of hands for support? I'm just going to count. So Can you put your cameras on if you? It's up to you. I can see everybody's hands. You do roll call if you want. So, okay, let's do roll call. Tina?
Oh.
For.
Rhiann's going to do it then. Sorry.
Chair first.
Yeah, I'm for.
Councillor Brian Blakely.
For.
Councillor Hugh Irving. Oh, he's on.
For.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For.
Councillor Mervyn Parry.
For.
Councillor Graham Timms.
Against at this stage.
Okay. Councillor Peter Scott.
For.
Councillor Glenn Swingler.
I'm against at this stage as well. I need to know about thistles. Why is everybody so keen to get rid of the thistles?
We're not opening debate again.
No, I know. So I'm against.
Cheryl Williams still with us?
Yes, I am. I didn't hear you call me. Yeah, I'm for.
For.
Yeah.
So that's 1, 2, 7 for and 2 against.
Okay, so that carries. So we're going to put that in. The last recommendation.
And another recommendation about working with the Trunk Road Agency and the AONB.
Yeah. Is everybody in agreement with that? Just show a hand.
I'll second that as well.
Yeah, I think that's everybody actually. Yeah, there's nobody voted against that, Rhiann. Okay. So Graham, over to you.
And I'd also suggest that we add another recommendation that it comes back to the Scrutiny Committee in a year's time.
Happy. So do you want to shout them all out now? No pressure.
People still here?
Yeah, okay, yeah. And the final one would be that. Do you want to check if people want it to come back, Chair, before?
Are we all happy for it to come back in 12 months' time?
Yes.
Hopefully we'll be here, but yeah.
Yeah. If elected.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Away, yeah.
And the final one is that the committee confirms that it has read, understood, and taken account of the well-being impact assessment in Appendix 1 as part of its consideration.
Okay. Yeah. Happy. Everybody happy with that? Yeah. Sure.
Happy. Yep.
Everybody's happy with that. Nobody against.
Okay. That's it, Chair.
Okay. So on block, we've voted for that. Yeah. So we're all happy with that. Lovely. Thank you ever so much, everybody. And thank you, Tony, the two Tonys, Jules, Dr. I'm sorry, I'm useless with names, Dr. Petty, and everybody's contributed to this. I think this is a great debate. You know, this is what Scrutiny does. We've been at it for 2 hours solid, and I feel, you know, we've come a long way, and I look forward to visiting all the flower meadows around Denbighshire. So swiftly moving on to agenda item 6. Rhiann, diolch.
Right, dyma chi adroddiad.
This is your usual work programme. The work programme itself can be seen on page 49. You'll see from the report itself in paragraph 4.8 that there was a report due today on the flood management responsibilities, but that was delayed until the 21st of October with the Chair's agreement to allow for the consultation on part 3 of the project to be completed in time for those results to be reported to you in that meeting. So that's the reason why that was postponed from today. At the Chairs and Vice Chairs group on the 1st of July, 2 items were referred to this committee. This one that you've just been discussing today, and also on the safeguarding of Welsh place names in Denbighshire. This has been listed for October, but if you look at Appendix 1, you'll see that you've got too many items to discuss in October at the moment. There are 5 now, and I know 2 of them, there's a question mark with regards to those. The one on the tourism signage strategy for Denbighshire. And the reason for that is that the office have had this year, they've had to concentrate on destination management plans. So that won't be ready. We can move that maybe to the beginning of 2022. I'm not quite sure where they'll be up to by then. And also the role of Denbighshire in public transport and active travel provision, that won't be ready either for October. So I don't know where you want to move that to. I'm aware that the Chairs and Vice Chairs group meets again this afternoon, and there are 1 or 2 items that might be coming to you. 1 for October and 1 for December. And those are also to do with plans against flooding from the sea. So I think we need to do a little bit of juggling with regards to the work programme. Could we juggle it at the next meeting, or do you want more time? If something happens this afternoon? Yes, it depends what emerges from the Chairs and Vice Chairs group this afternoon. I just wanted to draw your attention to it. Everybody happy? Is there anything you want from us today, Rhian? No, I think everything else is in order. If anybody has got any requests to the Chairs and Vice Chairs group, remember to complete the form. And it does help if we can get them plenty in advance so that we can hand them in. The group won't be meeting till November after today, but you can submit them at any time. And then the Cabinet work programme is there for information, and also Appendix 4 just gives you the latest about the recommendations from the last meeting. So is everybody happy to wait until the meeting this afternoon and then come to the next meeting, decide what we want to juggle about? I think that might be the best way forward. It's a lot easier. Everybody happy? Can you raise your hand if you're happy? Okay, thanks very much, and thank you, Rhian.
I know it's been the summer recess, so I wouldn't think anybody's got anything to report. So anybody got anything to report or no? No, Hugh, I think Rhian will contact you with no pressure, more work, but maybe of what what's her name? Sorry, forgotten. His predecessor was on what committees? Subcommittees. Rachel Flynn, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I don't know anything. This has really just literally arrived in the last 24 hours, so I don't know anything about anything.
I know I covered one of her meetings on a
service challenge.
Yeah, service challenge. So
with the service challenges, I don't think there will be a need because they were being held once this year, so they've all now been done, so there won't be any service challenges now until the next council, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, Brian's got his hand up.
Yes, right. Yes, I don't know whether you want to report. I attended the service performance meeting on the 23rd of July. You did anything to report? And I represent, of course, community scrutiny on that one. It was mainly to do with cemeteries. We talked about the problems within cemetery biodiversity. The waste model, way forward on that one. Maybe they need extra funding. I do believe that they were under budgets that they were talking about charging our residents out there more for burials. Tony Ward went on to say that the team was staying strong due to COVID. They had a good management team which functioned very well indeed. It had been a struggle with staff, mainly due to the lack of HGV drivers, shortage of staffing, as I mentioned there, and as I said, the main problem was funding. I commented on the state of our cemetery in Rhyl. Over the last few months, we had a lot of residents complaining about the state of them, and talking with Graham Boas on this, and we did talk that maybe once it had gone to cabinet regarding maybe the changing charging to the residents regarding funerals, that I might bring forward a paper on increasing the budget for cemeteries. I'm leaving that at the moment to see where things are going forward. That was it, Chair. It was all to do with cemeteries, worrying about the staff, making sure the staff were working correctly, problems with drivers, and the way forward on the service, on the waste model.
Thank you, Brian. Great, thank you. Right, just come to a close. Can I just thank the admin team who are here in the chamber today with Rian, Rodri, and Sharon, and our translator, and Graham Timms, and from Riffin. Thank you very much. Meric, ti eisiau dod I fewn, sorry?
I'd just like to draw your attention, an excellent report from Councillor Brian Blakely, but there was a complaint in the paper that vandalism is seriously in Coed Petla Prestatyn, and that families are very concerned because items are being broken on graves. But the county's response was quite poor, to be honest. They don't plan to do anything about it. Is there any way of pushing this forward or moving it to somebody else? I'll raise it with the officers. I'm sure if it's a matter for anybody, it's a matter for the Prestatyn Areas group, but I will raise it with officers. Thank you, Rian.
On that note, good afternoon, and thank you very much for attending the meeting today.
Thank you all. See you all later. Bye.